All right, welcome to Season 4, Episode 7, also known as Episode 118 of the Retro Game Club podcast. My name is Hugh, and joining me is someone who is delayed until 2023, Rob.
Yeah, it's mostly they need to clean me up. I'm just a mess. So, little polish here and there.
Yeah, I think Nintendo fell into a problem of, you created a really awesome game, and people, of course, want a sequel to it, but now you have to make something that is at least as good as the original. And that's probably pretty tough to do.
Yeah, I really hope that it's more features and fun things and not just bugs and trying to make something that feels new working on a 6-year-old console.
Yeah, maybe they're adding more photography missions or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I love that the announcement just had a screenshot or whatever, and people are just dissecting it for any news possible from it. I think he has Ganon's arm, and, what's that? Is that a dragon patch? What is that,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I'm a Zelda fan, but I feel like a lot of people are spoiled. This September, I'm finally getting a U.S. release of a Falcom game that came out in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So, Breath of the Wild, 1 more year delay is nothing. That's an amateur delay waiting for.
I think people are mostly with you on that. I think our fall release schedule for modern video games is pretty full. So yeah. I think a lot of people are actually a bit relieved. So we'll see.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
No, I had a really stupid revelation this week. I was playing something on my PlayStation 4, and I realized that there's a little hole on the bottom of the controller. Were you aware of this?
Yes. Yeah, I've used it before.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. There's a headphone jack on this controller. Now, mind you, I've had a PlayStation 4 for 5 years. And I'm like, why is there a headphone jack on the controller? And then I looked it up, and it turns out you can connect headphones to the controller. And if you don't want to disturb people in your house while you're playing a game, you can have headphones on. I've attempted to get Bluetooth headphones to work with the PlayStation 4. It turns out that doesn't work. And I'm like, well, that's really dumb. Why don't they have a way to use headphones on the PlayStation 4?
That's funny.
I thought you'd use a USB jack. I thought people that were using headsets were using a wireless USB thing or something. It never once occurred to me that you're connecting it to the controller itself.
Now, I could be wrong, but I think I've done this before. I've only played one multi-person online game on the PS4 once with a buddy of mine. But if I remember right, I had it set up where the game audio was coming out of my TV, but him talking to me was coming out of the headphones. So I would just have one headphone in. I think
your family can't hear all the racial epithets that they're yelling at you.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, people just calling me horrible things. No, luckily it was just one buddy of mine, and I appreciated him testing that out with me, but it was also a reminder of, I kind of like offline games.
So it kind of led me into a curious topic, and this is not a proposed topic for the show, but something I would like to hear from listeners. That's email. Was it email at retrogameclub.net?
Yes.
Yeah. Console features that you didn't know about for a long time. Bonus points if you actually owned the system and used it for years before you discovered this feature.
I'm going to give mine now because I'll forget by the next time we talk about this. Everyone knows how we go on this podcast. We can't remember what we ever talk about. 2 things. I had no idea that the original Xbox was significantly more powerful than the PS2, only because I just ignored it. Now, I'd never owned that console, but I did own a PS2, and I just assumed back then that they were pretty much the same. And I am someone who studies this stuff, but I despised Microsoft so much at the time that I just ignored them. And then I think my biggest one was it wasn't until after I owned a Game Boy that I realized, after I stopped owning one, it was already old at that point, that I realized a Game Boy had significantly better sound than the NES. It was stereo, it just sounded cleaner and brighter, and that's why it came with headphones, to literally prove that fact. Yeah.
Yeah, those are actually really good headphones too.
Yeah, yeah, they weren't bad at all. Now you can't even get chargers with stuff that you buy, like something you actually need.
Like, I still don't know what the PS2 USB ports are for. You can't put save games on there, right?
I don't think so. I was going to say keyboard and mouse for Linux, but that would have been PS3.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know, like, because the Dreamcast had a keyboard for online games, so it's reasonable for me to think that maybe the PS2 had a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
But I've looked at those ports, like, what exactly would I do with the USB? Because it doesn't play games off a hard drive, as far as I know. I know I could Google this. It would take me 1 second. But I figured it must be some accessory. Maybe I don't know, the Guitar Hero stuff, that just goes into the regular controller port, right?
Yeah, well, you could get a internal hard drive for the fat PS2, an IDE hard drive, but I don't think a USB hard drive would work the same with it.
Yeah, so I gotta look that's my next mystery, is what is the purpose of that exactly?
Yeah, maybe it's an NES port type thing where like never got used in the States.
Could be, yeah. So what else you got going on?
Oh man, we last weekend we went to an indoor water park because we wanted to take a quick trip somewhere, but it was spring break week, and so all flights were booked and hotels were expensive. So we went to someplace in mid-Michigan, like an hour and a half away from us.
Okay.
And we booked it for 2 nights with the idea of like, yeah, it's like an all-inclusive type thing. No, indoor water parks, sorry to anyone who likes them. Let me just say that they're not for me. And this is the only time I've ever been to one. But I will say it was cleaner than I thought it would be. That's a plus. It was far more expensive than I anticipated. And I didn't realize that most people weren't like us. I think it was a lot of locals having birthday parties and stuff there. And so by that evening, Friday evening, it was so packed that we already wanted to go. And then Saturday was so insanely packed that we left a day early. And also, the things I can't unsee with my eyes now. I'll just let everyone's imaginations go wild. But yeah, it's kind of exactly what you thought it would be, or anyone is imagining would think it would be. So never probably going to do that again. What else?
Okay. I think it's a sort of post-pandemic thing, because there's like an indoor water park when my kids were younger that we used to go to up a little bit north of Milwaukee, off Lake Michigan. That's really, really nice, as indoor water parks go.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a relative factor there. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one you have views of Lake Michigan, so like that kind of adds to the experience a little bit, because it's like literally right off Lake Michigan. But I will say this: it definitely helped me get over some body issue things, because oh man, the other dads there are in much worse shape than me.
I went the other direction. Well,
okay.
I don't know if it's the other direction, where I was like, since then, I have been to the gym every day, working out as hard as possible just to make sure I never end up that way.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the kind of motivation I got. Speaking of things you can't unsee, I thought it'd be kind of fun to try to watch that Street Fighter 4 anime movie from, I want to say like 2016, 2014, something like that. I made it 15 minutes in and I just couldn't. Again, I used to be a big anime fan and I just kind of fell off it, but just couldn't really hang with that. I've been playing Ever Oasis still. I really can't recommend that game enough. If you could find a good price for that game, you could find a really good price if you don't want a case for it. I think with the case, it's a little bit more expensive. I'm just having a blast with that game. It's just a chill game. The combat is fun. Everything about it. It takes something simple, a lot of simple things, and makes them complex in a nice way. So I can't recommend that game enough. And I also started playing Strangers of Paradise, the new Final Fantasy 1 reboot, side boot kind of thing, retelling. I don't know. Anyway, I've never played Final Fantasy 1, but I read the entire story on Wikipedia just to make sure that it is kind of a retelling, and it is. And in both these games, Strangers of Paradise and Ever Oasis, you're trying to defeat an evil entity referred to as Chaos. So that was kind of a coincidence that the two games I'm playing, I'm defeating Chaos in both, but I'm not sure that's uncommon for video games. But I do want to say that Strangers of Paradise feels like a PS3 game. The soundtrack is great. The combat is more complex than it should be. It's a different take on the Final Fantasy VII Remake combat. They make it a little bit more complex than that, and I think the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake was complex enough. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think I'm still playing it. I'm not sure if I'm going to bounce off or not. If I don't bounce off, it's just to try to prove to myself that I'm still a decent gamer. Because a lot of podcasts I listen to, they plowed through it in a few hours, so we'll see. But yeah, it's kind of a lot, but that's what I had going on. And yeah, I think we have a pretty fun episode this time.
Yeah. Let's get through a few news things here. In terms of like ROM hacks, there is a Ys 3 ROM hack that I thought was kind of interesting. It's called Ys 3 Rebalanced, and it's for the Sega Genesis version, and mostly adjusts the difficulty to make the game, I don't know, easier. Because Ys 3 is a very difficult game. In the Genesis version, you have to do a lot of like early grinding. Strangely, like the most balanced version of Ys 3, I think, is the Famicom version.
Huh. Now, I've only played the TurboGrafx version for this, and I beat it when I was really young, and I can't remember if it was difficult or not, because, I mean, I also beat Blaster Master and Fester's Quest. You know, one of those things where if you don't have many games, you just play it till you're done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll have to revisit that. Else here?
Let's see. Takedown letter pending. Modder recreates Quake 4 in Quake 1. That might not get taken down. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a tough call. You know, with Quake, I realize Quake's owned by like a big corporation now, but they still tend to be, you know, because Quake and Doom like have their roots and like fans doing crazy things with the game, they might let this one slide.
Yeah, I hope so. And I mean, the title says it all. It's pretty much a demake of Quake 4, which I don't think I've ever played. I think I stopped at Quake 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty neat project. If there's any id fans out there, definitely check that out.
And then someone made it's not really an Ocarina of Time remake. It's a program to load the Ocarina of Time ROM and run it through like a new engine that has more effects and stuff. I don't know. Nintendo will eventually find some way to get rid of this.
Absolutely, yeah. So apparently the reason why it hasn't been taken down yet is because you need to own the game in order to play it, and they even package in an executable that'll dump the ROM for you.
Well, here's the thing. It doesn't use... You have to have a specific... You have to have... I'm reading because there's a checksum on the file.
Mm-hmm.
And it's specifically for the European version of Ocarina of Time, where they forgot to remove the debug menu.
Oh, weird.
So there's a hidden debug menu, and only that version of the ROM.
So no one really owns that, so everyone's just going to pirate the ROM.
No one in the U.S. owns that. Like, who has a European Ocarina of Time card in the U.S.?
Yeah. But it adds a lot of cool stuff, you know, like twin stick camera controls, its own scripting system, you know, HD audio and some textures and stuff like that. So it seems like it's easier to do than like the X-Wing updates and probably the Mario updates too. So get it while you can. I forked the GitHub. It's still there. And I don't know if they take down a GitHub, if you forked it, is yours taken down too?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, so I should probably download
that'd be a very bad loophole if they didn't.
Exactly, yeah. And then we have a ton of... I put this in Doom running on stuff, but it's more Romero news. John Romero news. Okay, yeah, so apparently John Romero did a kind of a keynote chat, and he just has a told a lot of stories about when Sierra almost bought id, and how Wolfenstein 3D came about. They're pretty much just sick of Commander Keen, and it's kind of a not that lengthy of article, but there's a lot of little fun tidbits in here. So if you're a fan of Wolfenstein or Doom at all, I would definitely check out this Ars Technica article. And then right after that, John Romero tweeted at someone about Doom taking place in March 2022. He said that in the Super Nintendo port of it, the manual, for some reason, they put March 2022 as the date, but that wasn't from id. That was whoever ported it for Super Nintendo. And he said, Doom's supposed to be timeless. There's not an actual date. So he was actually very nice to everyone on Twitter who posted that. He wasn't a jerk about it. So I just wanted to point that out. He wasn't like calling people out or anything.
Yeah, I don't know much about John Romero. I could imagine him either being an incredibly nice guy in real life or being completely insufferable. Nothing in between. So I'm glad it's more of the former.
Yeah. And, when I've heard him in interviews, specifically the Retro Hour, he seemed pretty cool in that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He seems more approachable than Carmack. Not that I'm saying anything bad about Carmack. He's probably more like me, where he's more of an engineer, not a socialite.
Carmack's the Oculus Rift one, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I put this one or you put this next one.
Neither of us did. Zach put this one.
Oh, good.
It is about the history of the Sony memory stick.
It's very
and
technical.
The various iterations that it had, and then some of the bizarre hardware choices they made.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and to me, this seems like an important article. I mean, they're really documenting how to hack these things or build them or work with them. So in the future, if you want to, you can. It's just so strange how fast Sony goes through media types.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important because a lot of these, a lot of the proprietary memory things they built, are super expensive now. So if you own a Vita or a PSP, it's really, really hard to get memory for those unless you want to pay. I mean, to get a 1 gig card for your Vita is $100 minimum, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The SD adapters out there, when I read the reviews on Amazon, they tend to not be glowing reviews.
I got one of the standard ones from Amazon, and it worked fine for me, but I only used it for a few months, and I mostly used it for RetroArch. So, there you go. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I keep a Windows 7 virtual machine around just so I can back up, transfer games to and from Vita and PSP memory cards.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, because they have their proprietary software to do their memory card sync too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because that's how Sony rolls.
Yep. Let's see. On NeoWin, man creates entire game of Pong inside a single sprite, and this is on a C64. Did you understand this one at all?
Yeah, it's a sprite, right? And as you control it, the sprite frames change, based on your input, and it looks like it's playing Pong. I think it's a fully functional game of Pong inside that one sprite. I could probably do this on the Sega Genesis.
It's really impressive.
It'd probably be easier to do on the Genesis, I assume, but because you have more, you have bigger sprite. I don't know the sprite size for the Commodore 64, so that could be a bad assumption. But you could definitely do this on the Sega Genesis. I'm not going to, but it doesn't look extremely. It's a very fun idea that doesn't actually seem very hard.
Yeah. I suggest anyone interested in all to look at this because it's probably hard to visualize from how we're explaining it, but it is really impressive. And he did it mostly in C, I think. Yeah, he did. Yeah. There's a new Ken and Roberta Roberts game. So they were the founders of Sierra Online, stuff like King's Quest and Space Quest and all that stuff. And because they were bored during lockdown, they created Colosso Cave 3D. And apparently they demoed it at GDC recently. I did not watch that, but this looks pretty neat. They did say that they are not creating a new game company. They just created a game because they were bored.
Again, they may not own the IP for it. It'd be very sad if they got a takedown letter for their own own game. Now, so what I saw a different iteration of this article, and it was something to the effect of like Sierra creators got bored during lockdown and did 3D remake of an early game. And my brain went to a completely different early game of theirs.
Which one?
We're going to save that for when we decide to do a Blue episode.
Nice. Cool.
All right. And then I heard about this, but I did not read anything about it. So you have to cover
this one's all mine. So we're only going to talk about the retro part of this news article from PlayStation, from the PlayStation blog. So I'm sure if you're listening to this already, it was all old news, but Sony's releasing a Game Pass competitor. The important part for this podcast is PlayStation Plus Premium, which is $120 a year, and that'll let you play PS1, PS2, PSP, and PS4 games all on your PlayStation 5 or PS4. I think up to 300 or 400 games will be on it. My notes on this are the Vita is missing, and like you said, it has a microphone. The PS5 and PS4 have a microphone on the controller, and also has the kind of touchpad on the top. So, I mean, even games that use the back part of the Vita or the mic, you could pull off. You probably wouldn't want to, but you could. And I don't really see PS3 in there. Oh yeah, PS3 will be available through cloud streaming. It just hurts me that they just keep changing architecture, so emulation is difficult, or they're just unwilling to do it. So, are you going to spend $120 a year to play some PS2 games?
It depends what they are. I mean, I do buy the Nintendo thing, and that's mostly so I can have, like, to be pretty blunt, it's like so I can have Legend of Zelda on my Switch anytime. Like, I don't know. I know that's not true. I do play a lot of Super Nintendo games on the whatever the Switch online service is called. And because, like, you can add up to, like, 7 family members, my kids have it too, and I know at least one of my kids, my oldest kid, like, plays a lot of Dr. Mario between, like, as a, like one of those kind of mental break games you play when you're studying, like, I need 5 minutes.
No, totally. I mean, I think my point to this is, like, my experience with online gaming, meaning streaming services like Stadia, have been positive. But a lot of people, like IGN or the Kotakus of the world have been dogging on this, saying, like, do you want to stream a PS3 game? Do you really want that? You want to play it locally so there's less lag, but if it's done well, and then it's done well. And also, if I don't think there's that many PS3 games that a little bit of lag is really going to hurt you. You know what I mean? You're not going to be streaming Fortnite or some competitive game like that. And also for me, I think most of the PS2 or PS3 games that I would want to play have been ported to the PlayStation Network, like upgraded to PS4 formats. So,
I'm trying to find the confirmed list of games.
I don't think there is one.
Well, there's a page that has some games listed, and there's nothing on there for me.
Yeah, if there were games that if you would bought it, like, there's a few like $200 to $800 PS2 games just because they're impossible to find.
Yeah.
If those were on there, it would be worth it. But if those were on there, that would mean that a licensing thing had happened, and probably they would make a lot more money if they just, did a remake or an upgrade to PS4.
Yeah, I guess that's the big difference. So, like, with the Nintendo service, you're basically paying to get access to a lot of old Nintendo games, which are typically some of the best games on their respective systems.
Which are downloaded to your system.
Which are downloaded to the system, because, again, these are 8 and 16-bit games.
Yeah.
And Sony does not make a ton of games. And at least for me, I mean, I play a lot of like RPGs. Like I look at the list here, and there's just nothing I would ever play. Like Uncharted 3 is the only thing I see on the list I would be interested in playing, because I own a physical copy of it. Of the PS4 upgraded for the version that's like upgraded somehow for PS4.
Yeah.
And Uncharted 3 is like the worst game in the series, and it's like 12 hours long. So it doesn't really seem like it's worth it. I mean, if you really like the God of War games, I guess this is an okay deal. If you really like Red Dead Redemption and you don't have it, I guess it's an okay deal. It just depends what you want to play. This game list I'm seeing is really not for me.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when they when it gets released and see what's really on there, and if they'll release newer, very new games too, like Game Pass does. I think another thing that kind of strikes me with this is, with Stadia, and I think for the most part with Game Pass, is you don't need a system. You know what I mean? You need a controller and a TV, or a controller and a screen, and that lets you save money, because every few years you don't have to spend $300 to $600 for a new game console. And if you're hard up on money, that is pretty difficult to swallow. And so, spending $120 a year could really save you a ton of money and simplify your life, as long as your internet connection's solid. So I think this would only be for me if maybe if I was a college student and I didn't have a game collection already, getting this or Game Pass there you go. You have 400 games at your disposal. So I definitely think it would fit with certain lifestyles. I think that's the first time in our news we talked at length about something that wasn't really retro, but we are talking about the retro-ish games in there.
Yeah.
And then we have a quick topic here today.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit, sort of also on the topic of things you maybe didn't know your game console could do. I feel at this point this is common knowledge, but it wasn't for me at first. And that is Dreamcast VGA support. So the Dreamcast was the first and possibly still only system to support VGA output natively. You have to have an adapter, right? But the adapter is really more of a port adapter than like, it's not a converter. It's not like buying an HDMI upscaler, right? It's using, it's doing something that the Dreamcast support's doing. And Sega originally, launched their own thing called the VGA box, but third-party ones came up very quickly. I personally have a third-party one. And I assume everybody at this point that has a Dreamcast has a third-party VGA adapter.
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting because, like, not all games are compatible with it, and it seems like the games that are not compatible is mostly just due to developers not wanting to test their game on with VGA turned on, because there's literally just like a text file, like you include on your distribution that indicates whether or not VGA is supported, and only a couple games like explicitly break with VGA support on. Most games that don't work with VGA or aren't natively supported, you can actually do a disk swap. So you put in a game that works, and after you hear the startup, sound. What's that Dreamcast startup sound called? I guess it's just the Dreamcast startup sound.
Yeah, a chime, maybe? I don't know.
Whatever it is, yeah. You can just swap the disk real quick, and the game will magically work. As you might expect, over at RetroRGB.com, they have an extremely lengthy write-up on Sega Dreamcast VGA and other options, other things you can do with with VGA mode. Like, you can run it, like, they talk about like converting it to 240p mode. I don't know why you would want to do that. It could just be that there's a special monitor you want to use. And about, I guess in some cases you can, they talk about using CDRs, and I guess in some cases the games that don't work, you probably, if you were burning them to CDR, you could actually add VGA support at the time. But anyhow, this article, I'm not going to go into all the details. It talks a lot about like the differences between doing VGA and doing HDMI upscaling on the Dreamcast. Today, I found like 3 different stores all selling third-party. Obviously, Sega, they're already third-party. Sega's not making a Dreamcast VGA cable anymore. But there's like 3 different stores selling them today. Some of them are ones I'm sure you've heard of, like Stone Age Gamer, of course, has one. I think it's like $20. They're all around $19.99. So it's just a matter of which of these online stores you trust, I guess. And what else? Like I have some notes here of my own history with this thing. Like when I bought the Dreamcast, I certainly did not know it had VGA support, and then I was reading something, it was a GamePro magazine, they ran something called the Dreamcast Survivor's Guide. So this was like, a few months after the Dreamcast was discontinued, sort of like here's what you can still do with your beloved Dreamcast. And that mentioned VGA box. I'm like, that's pretty neat. But I didn't actually get it until I bought like my second Dreamcast. So I don't ask why I have 2 Dreamcasts. I think I actually have 3. But it was something I got at a yard sale, and I happened to be working this job where there was a lot of like off-hour support required. So I'm like, I'm just going to bring this Dreamcast into the office and hook it up to one of my VGA monitors. Like we just have a lot of monitors laying around. So I'm like, we don't have TV sets laying around, but I could easily, easily hook up a Dreamcast to it. And then like, as everything goes for me, I buy this adapter, and then like the next day I go to a garage sale, and I find someone selling like a box of like random Dreamcast stuff. Like that's where I got the Dreamcast keyboard, which I've never used, and the VGA box, my second VGA box, and a whole bunch of bootleg games. This was obviously some hobbies. I think I ended up getting rid of most of the bootleg games. I don't remember where or how, but it was like, one of those CD walls you get at like Cassette Planet or something, just filled with every Dreamcast game bootlegged.
So just CDRs, probably from Usenet or something?
Yeah, just like, a CDR with, the name of the game written in marker on it. Yeah. And even today, I still use it. That's the main way I play my Dreamcast. I have it hooked up to a TV that has a VGA mode. And really, I don't think it looks any worse. Like, I have a PS2 with a component adapter, and I don't really think there's much of a visual difference between the two.
I wonder what the PS2 with a component adapter does. Like, does it bring it up the 240p or 240i? I guess that would be.
I would say that. I'm not real technical on this, but I think games in widescreen mode look a lot better through the component cable than they do through, the regular composite or S-video out.
Well, I know with the Wii, if you use a component cable, that brings up to 480i. So you're technically in DVD kind of resolution there. So it does help it a little bit, but I don't know what the Dreamcast or the PS2 would do, but yeah. Unfortunately, my favorite Dreamcast game, Bang-I-Oh, is one of the few games that specifically says if you boot it up, it says this is not supported. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like they went out of their way to not support it, which is really frustrating. I wonder if there's a patch out there or something for it. In fact, in my modded Dreamcast, I load it in a different way than I do the rest of the ones. Just because, the HDMI mod expects games, I think, to work a specific way.
Yeah. I mean, some of the games that don't work are like the Dance Dance Revolution games. Don't know why. Don't really care. One of the King of Fighters games. Few things I've really never even heard of.
I'm trying to think of other comments I have on this. Let's see. I mean, it was the same day I got my Dreamcast that I knew I could just go on Usenet and download every game. Mine came, I think, with 2 or 3 games I got, but I immediately hooked it up to VGA because I had an extra, I think, VGA, either 17 or 21 inch Scepter monitor, and it was just in my little tiny rented room I had at the time, and I just loved it. I spent so much time with it, and I thought it was so cool that I was playing on a monitor and not having to use one of my old CRT TVs that were on the verge of death because they were like from 1983. You know, my setup specifically with a projector doesn't really yield well to the VGA output. My projector just does not like it. Mm-hmm. It supports 480p, but it just for some reason does not like things upscaled to that or from VGA to HDMI. So it really didn't work for me. That's why the HDMI mod worked a lot better for me. And I do like the upscaling in the HDMI mod, but I think that really only matters once you get above 32 inches. If you're on like a 27-inch monitor or something, like it looks great, not upscaled. It's only when you're getting on the large screen, flat panel TVs that I think you start noticing it being a bit blocky. But yeah, that's really my thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's about all I got. Just wanted to talk about it in case we still have listeners that were unaware you could hook up Dreamcast to a VGA monitor.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see. We got some non-Dreamcast games for our game club.
Yeah, neither of these games are on Dreamcast.
So my game, it's criminal that this is my game and not yours because you know far more than I do about this series. Even though we have about the same experience, I think you pay attention to certain things more than I do, and I just kind of power through games more, and I think skip a lot more conversations within games. But anyway, my game was really any game in the East Book 1 and 2 series. This time I played Legacy of East, which is the DS port, and the only reason why I played it is because I never knew it existed, and I recently purchased. I got a great price on it on eBay. I can't believe the price I got on it because it's a pretty rare game. Yeah. And anyway, so East Book 1 and 2 came out in 1989, in Japan, but 1990 here in the States for the TurboGrafx CD. I think it was the pack-in CD for the Duo, at least in one of the packages, but I adored this game when I got it. It definitely wasn't a game that I thought I would like. I thought it was kind of a throwaway game before I knew anything about it back when I bought my TurboGrafx CD. It took me forever to save up for that. And when I got into it, I mean, immediately I was drawn in. The intro just sucks you in. It's this animation that is just gorgeous with sweeping music and really, emotional music, I guess that's the only word I could think of right now, but in a nice voiceover kind of giving you the details, the history of the game, and I was hooked ever since. And so you play Adol Christin, this redhead dude, this warrior adventurer that never, ever get on a boat with him because it will sink. Mm-hmm. I think most East games start with that way. He either has amnesia or his boat sank, and that's how he doesn't have any of his
gear. Yeah.
Yes. And so this time there was like a storm wall around this island. He tried to get through it, crashed, was saved, and that's when he was brought into this adventure in the town of, is it pronounced Minia? Is that how you pronounce the name of the town?
I don't know I would go Minea, but I don't know if it matters.
I only say Minia because it was known for silver mining, and I just thought they weren't very creative.
Creative, yeah.
Because they're not, because they just use like real world locations and change your name by like one letter, pretty much.
Right.
Like
Usually that's what they do. Yeah.
the Rome-uns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you find the Books of Ys, and you defeat, what's his name? The villain, Dark Fact, I think it is.
Fact, yeah.
And that's what brings you in Ys Book 2. So Ys Book 1 is really the longest and best intro to any game ever. It really isn't that long. And then that brings you in Ys Book 2, where you get more magic abilities that help you get into different areas of the game, and the story goes from there. But I won't go too far in the story. You know, most people know about this game. It's definitely known, if anything, for its music. The whole series is, but this really started it out. And it is also famous for its bump mechanic, which I cherish. I think if you first get into this game, it'll take you like 15 minutes really to get the aiming down in it. But once you get it, and you could really grind quickly in this game. But the DS port didn't get rid of it really, but now you could swing your sword for some reason, and it's a lot more picky if you try to use the bump mechanic. I actually couldn't get it really working. So the way it works is, in any of them, is you kind of bump into the enemy. So the side that you're holding your sword hits them, not dead on. If you hit them dead on, then that's them hitting you, even if you're running into them. So you'll take damage instead. So if you hit them kind of at an angle, then you get them. Anyway, this lets you swing your sword. It did not work out. What I did like about it is, like, the sound was still pretty cool. The cutscenes, some were arguably better. And that's definitely arguable. Some might just say they're different. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
by the time the TurboGrafx 16 CD came out, like, you could put anything on it. You put full video on it, so it looked great, just like it did in the DS. And it did have, the towns were in 3D, and like the walls were in 3D, which were different than I remembered from any other port. I didn't play a lot of the ones you did, Hugh, but so I thought those parts were cool, and then nothing else about the DS port was cool.
The DS port I pretty much rank as the worst version of the game.
Yeah. So I just played it as a novelty, and I didn't even play it that long. I actually hopped on the TG16 version. I think you mentioned this, where it is kind of a palate cleanser for me. I could just use it, play it for a little bit to kind of de-stress, unwind, get my mind off things, and the DS port did not do that for me. So
No, it's just not a very, very well done port.
But yeah, so that's my thoughts on it. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly play like the TurboGrafx or PC Engine version here on the whatever it's called, TurboGrafx MIDI. I probably play through this game like once a year. I do it almost like a New Game Plus run though, because like there isn't a New Game Plus mode. Like I think Ys 4 was the first game that did New Game Plus, and but you have a password where you can start at max level. So I just figure that is a substitute for New Game Plus. Because really the grinding, like the worst part about these games is they often require a lot of grinding, depending on the generation. Some games require a lot more than others. Like Ys 3 in particular is notorious for you just have to spend a lot of time grinding. In the original 1 and 2, the TurboGrafx version, not so much. The difficulty's balanced pretty well. But like Chronicles, which is, I think, overall the best version, you do have to do a lot of grinding up front in Ys 1.
And you put that's for PSP and Steam?
Yeah. So I have like my informal ranking of the Ys ports. I have first the Ys Chronicles, which is a PSP and Steam game. So if you go to buy Ys 1 and 2 today, that's the one you're going to most likely get. Then number 2, TurboGrafx PC Engine. Then I put 3 mobile version. 4, the Master System port, which is actually pretty good, although it only has part 1. It's a little bit on the difficult side, but it's actually like the music sounds really good on it, and the graphics I think look really nice. Then let's see, Famicom. Then 6, the late 90s Eternal Remakes, which is what the DS version is based on.
Okay.
Number 7, DOS. Number 8, Falling Down a Flight of Stairs. And number 9, playing the DS version.
Yeah. Yeah, you do mention it did come with a CD soundtrack. I don't have that. What was that like? I mean,
It's not good. It's not a very like honestly, I think the Master System version might have a better soundtrack.
that's hilarious.
It's again based on like the Eternal remakes where they did a strange remix of the soundtrack that I don't know, I don't care for it as much as the TurboGrafx version. And then Chronicles comes with like multiple soundtracks. They have yet another remixed version, which is very close to the TurboGrafx version.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can play like the chiptune version on there if you want. Like the original chiptunes from Yuzo Koshiro is an option on that version.
Huh.
So that's actually a cool way to play it. It really is. Like the DS version though is unfortunately on the avoid list. The box is nice. Has really good box art.
Yeah,
If that's your thing.
And the intro is nice. You could load up the intro and then play a different game.
Yeah. Well, it's the same intro against the Eternal. So, there was a time where Falcom didn't really have a lot of developers. They've always had sort of two teams. One team, they originally had like one team doing East games and another team doing the Dragon Slayer games, which became the Legend of Heroes games. And the East team, after East 3, all left to go start a new game company. Right? They created Quintet. And that's why like East 4 and East 5 are outsourced. Like it wasn't, Falcom did the soundtracks for those games, but different companies actually wrote the games. And by the late 90s, they, East 5 was the last game they made, and they did like Windows remake of East and East 2 as East Eternal, and they have really nice cutscenes, and they don't really play that well because they're trying to kind of like retrofit like a sword. Like this is the problem with the DS version. Like they want to get rid of the bump mechanic and replace it with like you actually swing a sword like in a Legend of Zelda game. Mm-hmm. But they're trying to like do that without changing anything else in how the game plays. So it just doesn't, like you basically have to rewrite the engine, which is what they did with the E6. Like they got a development team again and they wrote a new engine, and there the sword action actually works. There's no, it wasn't like based on a bump system to begin with. Right?
It's a fantastic game.
Yeah. That's a very good East game. That's a little bit grindy, especially towards the end of the game, but is a really, really good game.
I would like to say that in East 1 and 2, where it is grindy, they specifically give you spots to grind, like the basement in East 2 in the town. Mm-hmm. It's like made for you just to grind up a few levels. One of my
so in Chronicles they actually cap that part.
Oh, that sucks. That's stupid.
They get rid of the endless stream of monsters, and it's like 2 monsters after a while. Yeah.
Because I would just keep going up levels. But one of my secrets is there's the Rhodonut. I think is what will. It's something you could find maybe 1 to 3 times in the game, and it'll bring you up a level. And is it the Rhodonut, the Rhodoseed, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
And what I do, most people, even in game facts and stuff like that, they tell you, they're just like, yep, get the Rhodonut and then use it right away. What I do is I save it because...
until the very end, yeah.
Yeah, till right before I'm about to go to the last guy, because another thing about this game is if you can't beat the current boss you're on, when you die, it puts you right before the boss. Just grind out to another level, and then you'll just walk all over them. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Yeah, it's East Book 1 and 2. Let's go to your game.
So I picked something a lot shorter. Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, which is just one of my favorite platformers on the NES. It's a fairly short game. I spent more time looking at speedruns than I did playing it. Mm-hmm. You can play through the game if you're playing even casually. Like, I don't know, you get through it in 30 minutes. Just as a sort of... like I took the speedrun record here. Yeah. So 30 minutes would be an extremely slow-paced, casual playthrough of the whole game. Mm-hmm. The speedrun record is 9:45. And that seems to be about the theoretical limit. There is a tool-assisted speedrun that is actually longer. So tool-assisted speedruns are when you're doing it on an emulator, but that hasn't been touched in years. So I assume like if someone did a tool assistant speed run, they could probably get it to maybe slightly under the human limit. But yeah, I mean, it plays a little bit like Super Mario Brothers, and a little bit, like Mario 2 in that you can pick up items and throw them at enemies. I don't believe there's any enemies you can pick up, but there's lots of items, boxes or giant apples. What I like about it is like how the whole world is big and you're like chipmunk sized. Like I just think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So you pick up an apple, the apple's like twice your body, right? Because you're a chipmunk. Like I just like that they scaled, like they have chipmunk-sized creatures in a human-sized world.
Yeah.
Like that's just great. And some of the levels have little, I wouldn't say problems, but you have to like hit switches, to like start or stop something in the level, like a conveyor belt or a thing dropping, spiky balls on you, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a fun game. This is another one I probably play through this, every 1 or 2 years. I'll just fire it up for 30 minutes and casually play through it. There's really no part of the game that's difficult. I don't even think, like, even with the last boss, none of the bosses are really hard either. The difficulty mostly comes from the fact that you don't have a long life bar. You only get like 2 or 3 hits. And on some levels, they do throw a lot of stuff at you, but it's always the same pattern. So if you just kind of take your time, you'll get through the game no problem. Now, what's your opinion of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. The pretty much the same team, at least 2 people, did Strider, Willow, DuckTales, at least one of the Mega Man games, I think 2 or 3. So, I mean, those are all great games. Yeah, the soundtrack is great. The play control just feels so tight. I think that's the hardest thing with NES games, or really any 8-bit platformer, is making the jump and the walk mechanics feel great, and they just hit it on this. And yeah, there is nothing wrong with this game. I think, like you said, it's one of the best platformers on the NES, and I often watch Takade, a speedrunner, play this one. He currently has the 2nd place record on it, which, is like, I think, microseconds away from 1st place, but just, a really fun game to watch other people play. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, what more could you really say about this one? It's almost like, everyone just go play it.
I was actually looking at Takade's stuff here. How do you get a speed run for ice hockey on the NES?
I think it's to get either a certain number of points, or I think you can mercy the team. I could be wrong. Please don't. If anyone knows, please write us, but be nice about it. If I'm totally wrong, but I think it's something like that. I do remember watching him play it though, and I think he almost always picks all skinny dudes.
Yeah, well, again, if it's a speed thing, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I just, is there not a time limit?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a timed game, but
I mean, like, you'd want to win by 1-0 from a speed standpoint, right? Because every time you score, your team does like the little dance, right?
Unless if you beat them,
and the clock stops, right?
Unless there's like a mercy, if you get them by 10 or something, the game just ends. Something.
No,
like
it doesn't. I've definitely beaten the computer by like 30 points.
I know it. That game is so easy once you get it down. Yeah.
All right. So what are we playing next time?
So my pick is a game I've put on this list at least 3 or 4 times, and then I keep deleting it. But it's actually staying up there this time. So Populous, really any version, there's Populous 1, 2, and a few others. There might even be a mobile port. But yeah, any port of any version of this game. So what's yours?
What did I put down? That's a good question. Mappy Land. So I saw this, I don't know why. I saw in the news this week that Mappy Land is getting released on the Nintendo Classic service. And I've never played it. And I like Mappy, so I'm going to try Mappy Land.
Nice. Well, if any of our listeners have played Populous, Mappy Land, any port of Ys or Chippendales Rescue Rangers, if they have opinions on Wolfenstein 3D, the PlayStation subscription to play retro PlayStation games, or if they're playing the new Ocarina of Time PC port, please email us. email@retrogameclub.net. That is email@retrogameclub.net. And we have all our social, Facebook, Twittery things on there that Zach does for us, and that's in our link tree. That's in our show notes. So, please write in. We'd love to hear from you.
We've got some email here. Caleb writes in about something that is not an April Fool's joke, but at a store called Ollie's. Have you ever been to an Ollie's?
Never heard of it.
Okay. So this is a product that 100% is on brand for an Ollie's store. It is the Arcade 1-Up giant joystick. He thought it was perhaps an April Fool's joke, but no, it is a real product that you can buy. And this is a, 3-foot tall joystick with also foot pedal for reasons. That you can play Pac-Man on if you have, maybe it's for Shaq. I don't know who this is for.
Yeah. Or maybe he's the size of a chipmunk.
Maybe, yeah. But no, if you go to arcade1up.com, this is a real, actual product they sell. I need a scale model next to like an adult human, though, because it's kind of hard to tell from these pictures. Like,
yeah,
one of these, it's a kid, so they say it's 3 feet high.
Could you imagine having this in your house?
Yes, I can. Yeah. It has Pac-Man, Pac-Mania, New Rally X, Galaga 88. Oh, that's a weird one. Dig Dug, Super Xevious, Rolling Thunder, Dragon Spirit, and Mappy. Requires 2 AA batteries, weighs 15 pounds.
I feel like this is how you should play Mappy.
All right, and then thank you, Caleb, for telling us about the giant joystick at Ollie's. And if you live in, I feel like this is a Pennsylvania store chain, but maybe it's in other states too. It's just a store that sells weird overstock items, like things no other store possibly would ever want to sell. That's what you get at Ollie's. And then Joe writes in to say he really enjoyed the EGM March 95, and he's about 100% sure he read that issue back in the day. He says that Jaguar fighting game was actually true, and he sends us a link to a YouTube video with some footage of it. It's called Thea Realm Fighters, and I watched this video, and it looks absolutely horrible. It looks like a ripoff of Bloodstorm, but a very, very bad ripoff of Bloodstorm. I mean, it just looks... Did you watch this?
No, I didn't get a chance yet. I will, though.
I can't describe how awful this game looks. And then he said he saw Another World / Out of This World at his Sears demo computer. Good luck explaining that to your kids. He was really impressed with the animation and graphic style, but he has never gotten past the first stage.
That's, almost everyone.
He mentions that we should have mentioned the naming controversy. So originally, I guess the developer called it Another World, but there was a soap opera in the US called Another World. So they called it Out of This World, which he says was also which was a sitcom.
Yeah.
And he says Street Fighter 2 Turbo is his favorite version of Street Fighter 2.
I don't think that's a controversial take on that.
I don't think so at all. He says the only downside is they made the computer like impossible to beat.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you for that. And we got a lot of social feedback here. The social question of the episode is tell us your 80s, 90s gaming magazine memories. And someone writes in and he remembers filling out a warranty card for his NES to get the first issue of Nintendo Fun Club zine. And he remembers cutting out pictures to make his own zine because of it. And he is kicking himself for not saving it because it's like for $1,500 on eBay right now, which I never really thought about. Let's see. Someone else was a 2000s kid, so he really didn't have magazines like we did, but there was Pokemon World and Pocket World and that was a classic in the UK, and there were always tons of errors and stuff in it. And he won a joke competition in it. That's cool. Let's see. Someone else.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, I fell into the rabbit hole of watching. Someone uploaded a YouTube video of a Home Shopping Network video of the giant joystick.
Wow.
And they're adult size. They're adult-sized person playing it actually had to put it up on a table.
Oh.
Because I guess 3-foot joystick, that would be, depending on how tall you are, that could be below your waist, right?
Yeah.
It does not look like a very good joystick.
So it's really just uncomfortable for everybody.
It's certainly uncomfortable to watch this guy try and play Galaga on it. But they wanted $120, and at Ollie's they only want $60. So this is definitely like nobody bought this thing, and Ollie's took it because that's what they do.
Yeah. Let's see. Someone else writes in they loved EGM and GamePro. They would read them cover to cover. The tips and tricks were always helpful and helped further his gaming career. Let's see. Some memories that would last forever for different mind-altering reasons. And he points out the controversial cover of the Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest Nintendo Power issue. Yeah, there's a guy that does not look like a Belmont holding the severed head of Dracula. And what else here? Oh, someone has the first issue of Nintendo Power framed, and it looks like it's 2 different variants of it.
No, it's the first issue and last issue. For the last issue, they recreated the first issue.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, I was looking at this, and I thought, I don't remember that one. Wow. It's too bad that still doesn't exist. Well, I guess it exists in a podcast, but not the same.
Yeah, the podcast is kind of... Have you listened to the Nintendo Power podcast?
I like it when it's a topic I like. Like the most recent one is Kirby, and I don't really care for Kirby, but it's only because I haven't played it much. In fact, that's going to be a Game Club game soon. But yeah, so I really didn't listen to that one. But every once in a while, I'll like it. It's hit or miss for me.
Yeah, I like the quiz part at the end, but I don't know. It's something kind of... I don't know. There's something kind of dry about it. It feels very NPR-like to me.
It's funny. I was going to say that might be why I like it. It's wholesome.
Okay.
Yeah, but it definitely is the least controversial podcast out there.
Yeah. I think it's funny when brands like run their own podcast. Because I mean, clearly it's not going to be objective. But the only good thing is you don't get commercials.
Yeah.
I wish more brands did it. Like I actually like the Trader Joe's podcast. Has no commercials, and it's just about new products at Trader Joe's.
Oh, that's funny. I never thought about that.
So, I mean, it is a commercial, but I kind of wish more stores did stuff like that. Or brands. I don't know why, but that stuff's just sort of amusing to me.
Yeah.
It's like, what if you lived in a world where the only thing that existed was Trader Joe's? That's sort of the vibe it has going.
Yeah, that's all they talk about.
Yeah.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up, right?
Yeah. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, please play Populous and Mappy and write us. And, thank you.
And let me know if Ollie's has a podcast. That would be hilarious.
Yes, yeah.